You are listening to The Growth Signal. My name is Alyssa Nolte,
And my name is Charlie Sells.
and we're going to get right into it. Charlie, what is your hot take?
Most leaders do, most leaders get clarity wrong, but not for the reasons you probably think. Most leaders think clarity is all about providing more data, more information, quick answers, fast decisions to move things forward, when in reality, those are probably symptoms that you have confusion and misalignment in your team, in your organization.
I am so excited to have this conversation because there's a lot of things in leadership that if you don't have it really clearly defined, it is going to show up in your business. And it's going to show up in all facets and all parts of your business. Because for a lot of people who still have the founder involved with their business, which is quite a few, you're almost clouded by the fact that the founder is there. And if they're not very good at taking themselves out of this thing that they love and taking themselves out of this thing that they deeply understand and having like that flip perspective of the rest of the world who doesn't have their context, who doesn't have their background, who doesn't have their experience, who doesn't eat, sleep, and breathe their business, then you are going to have a really hard time explaining to people what it is you do and why you matter. So
Yep.
take us through that. How do we start to go from more to very clear, very specific, very simple?
I think you have to start by understanding what this progression looks like. Everybody that you just described who is either founder led, founder involved, or at any kind of executive level, director, whatever it is, they experience one of these six things internally, and eventually it leads to a bunch of stuff externally that you cannot control. So it starts with poor decisions. And when I say poor decisions, I don't mean wrong decisions. I don't mean bad decisions. I mean, they're probably saying it way too fast and trying to move on, or they've just answered it so many times that now they're getting frustrated and their tone is coming across like they're frustrated. That leads to people who are duplicating work, or you as a leader who is repeating themselves over and over and over again, which nobody does. That means everybody's wasting their time. Not only that, your whole team is going to experience low morale. And by the way, when I say team, I mean your agency, your contractors, your internal team, doesn't matter. Everybody's going to feel like we're spinning our tires, which means they're eventually going to burn out. And finally, it will just lead to stagnant or slow growth. All of those things are very progressive. And it just starts with a leader trying to trade off or compromise speed for efficiency and expediency, and hoping that the team will just get it. And to your point, most of it does not come from a lack of vision. It doesn't come from a lack of ideas. They have literally been in the jar for too long that they don't know how to read the label. And until they can actually get outside of themselves again and get above their business, then they're able to entertain new data, new ideas, take on doubts and disagreements in a healthy way. And everybody gets unstuck and experiences that momentum going forward.
Yeah. And one of the things too that as a, business owner myself, a small business owner myself, sometimes we fall into the trap of every dollar is a good dollar. And so then we start to bring in work, especially if you're in services. We start to target customers who aren't really a right fit. We start to do services that aren't really what we set out to do. And all of the sudden, what used to maybe started as a very clear, simple vision of my name is Alyssa Nolte, I do this and I serve those people, starts to become, okay, my name is Alyssa Nolte and I can do the following and I do serve the following. And that just every time you do that, it starts to muddle. Now, don't get me wrong, we all need that, that almighty dollar. We're small businesses and we need the cash flow. But at what cost to your overall brand messaging and your ability to scale?
Absolutely. And this is where confusion and misalignment really start to take root. Because if it's happening internally, what it bleeds out to is you have very frustrated customers who are getting different messages in different channels, sales and marketing when they are not aligned, when they're saying different things and not working in concert with one another. You're going to miss opportunities. Stuck people are going to stay stuck. So a customer who's not willing to make a decision is not going to make a decision. Your brand reputation will eventually erode, and then eventually you're just going to lose money. That's where it becomes that. I mean, that's unfortunately where most people feel the pain, is when by the time you feel, lost revenue or a brand that is misaligned and just confusing your customers. Now you have to look back and go, where did this all start? And it really just starts from a leader's ability to be very clear and communicative about where you're going, where you're headed, and ensuring that everybody is at least aligned, if not in agreement with that direction.
And that's hard too, because I can imagine like, okay, you've made it by the time you really start to feel those experiences and those symptoms of the original root cause of not being clear in the beginning, you might be pretty far down a road in terms of like maybe you've hired a bunch of employees to do things that didn't fit. Maybe you did an entire marketing campaign that you spent a lot of money on. Maybe it's a logo or a website or something. And there is this tendency to say, well, I'm already down this road, so I might as well keep going. But I've always been more of the mind of it is not too late to turn around. And yes, we wasted this time, but we've sunk that cost into this and a microeconomics term. It's a sunk cost now.
Mhm.
And it's okay to say, let's keep what's good, but let's recognize that some of this needs to be shed so that we can have a really clear brand experience for our customers and our future customers.
And you hit the nail on the head right there. It has very little to do with what are we not doing that we should be doing, although that is a part of the process to discover new opportunities and doing things in maybe a new way. But at the end of the day, it's really affirming what is working and leaning more heavily into that so that you can then go do some low risk tests and, start to move your team in a new direction. So I think that's what a lot of leaders, they trade off what they think is new for what is already working, and the goal isn't to shut off the valve that's already working because that's stupid. The goal is to say how can we bring all of these things into balance and in concert with one another again, so that we can then move to the next season in the next phase of whatever that means for our brand.
I do want to ask you about the difference between what is new and what is working and what could work, right? Because I see a lot of business owners who will do a low risk test. And if it doesn't produce immediate mind blowing results, they're like, well, this clearly didn't work and we're going to move on. And they almost do this whiplash of it's not working and they write it off. But for example, when I started this podcast, I got 10 episodes in before I really had a listener, let alone an entire listener base. And now I'm hundreds of episodes in, and I have people who listen to the episode religiously and who tell me about the episodes, and I'm getting great traction. But that took time and effort and dedication. I mean, hundreds of hours to decide that this was going to work. So how do we draw that line between this is working versus this will work versus I need to abandon this because it's not ever going to work for my business?
Well, I'll tell you about a client that I've been working with recently. We've been together for about a year now. Helped kind of get the brand started. They've added some team members. We've tried a few things here and there, but back in the spring, we started to build out some funnels, some webinars, some paid funnels, some just things that we thought would move the needle, right? And so I think I probably built out 5 or 6 of these, and our show up rate was garbage, and, looked like there was no traction. And so, what I started to do was I put the replay link to these in several of their newsletters, which go out every other week. And wouldn't you know, people actually do want their content. They just can't show up at a certain time or don't want to pay for it. And so,
Yeah.
very recently, we've now pivoted to say, your listeners probably need to be hearing from you on a more regular basis. So let's just start a podcast. It does not have to get 1 million followers. It does not have to get 1 trillion downloads, but it's going to provide the value that we're already seeing your content provide. We just have to do it differently. And so they could have given up after the first one. They could have given up after the second one. And realistically, I think by every metric, you would look at it and go, yeah, that probably, we shouldn't have done that in the first place. But we never would have discovered that the audience actually does engage with it if we serve it up to them in the correct manner. That's what a lot of businesses, especially when there's money involved, because that was mostly a free test, right? Like very low risk. We
Right.
learned a lot. When there's money involved, now the stakes are a little bit higher. Now we have to be a little bit more conscious about conversion rates. Is the creative working? Is it the words? Is our offer dialed in? There's all kinds of different factors. The difference, though, is when there is money involved, that's the time where you should be paying the most attention. You can do anything for free. You can come up with all kinds of ideas until you're actually willing to put a little bit of fuel behind that fire. You're not really going to know what resonates. And so, again, the goal isn't necessarily to find success. The goal is to find the next right step. And if the next right step is we try this test again in a different manner, in a different channel, whatever it is, well, there's your answer. You just keep going at it.
And I think some of that too is like expectations setting, right? Like if you start a podcast and you're expecting to be the next Joe Rogan overnight, you are going to be disappointed no matter who you are, right?
That's
For
right.
the most part, most podcasts take a very long time to get off the ground. And even so, they never get to that level, right?
No.
One of the things that when I was first getting into business, we wanted to, I owned a research company. We wanted to do political research and how do people decide who to vote for. So looking at marketing campaigns around politics. This was before everything got crazy, just so everyone before everyone jumps down my throat, like pre-2015.
Yeah.
So we had
Right.
decided we wanted
In a
to
much less divisive time, right?
a much less divisive time, and actually that is something I discovered really interestingly. So we wanted to get into politics to do this research, to do, like, ad testing, essentially. And so we got in touch with a company that put on a political consultants conference because we had talked to some people and they said, "Oh, you don't wanna go to the advertisers, the consultants are the ones who have all the money. It's not even the campaign manager, the consultants have the money, they decide how it gets spent." So we found a political consultants conference that was held in DC every, like, 3 months or so. And I reached out to the organizer there and I explained, what we were trying to do. And he said, "Okay, I'm going to tell you, this is a very small, tight knit group of people. You will have to show up more than once in order to get into the door. The first time they meet you, they will not even have a conversation with you. So just know that coming in. And then the second time, they might remember you, but you haven't really cracked like their little circle yet. It's going to take 3 or 4 times of you showing up. So you're going to have to fly out here at least 4 times, come to this conference, spend thousands of dollars before you really even get a chance. Are you willing to do that?" And him setting that expectation for me changed everything. Like, when
Mhm.
I walked into that room for the first time, side note, it's all very, like, super inner circle because I fully expect, like, red side, blue side, and nobody commingles. They're all friends, or at least in 2015 they were. They're all friends with each other. They're all friendly behind closed doors, and then they go out onto the street and they hate each other again. But it did take time, and he was right. It was 3 or 4 times and thousands of dollars and hotel stays and flights until we could crack that code of like, "Oh, you're serious about this. You're showing up. You're not just here for a money grab of like, oh, politics has money," and trying to grab it. And so when he set my expectations that way, it really changed my perspective.
Yeah. I mean, that's half the battle, isn't it, Alyssa? Because so many clients think this is the email, this is the deal, this is the promotion, this is the product.
Right.
It's going to change the world, not only their world, but my world and how I do business, and it's going to launch me into the stratosphere and all of those things, right? Well, the conventional marketing wisdom for the longest time was a customer will have to have 20 touch points with your brand before they ever remember who you are.
Yeah.
And so many experts in their field are so good at doing the one-to-one work, they don't know how to do the mass marketing. And I don't mean millions of people necessarily. I just mean anybody more than 10.
Right.
Trying to get in front of new audiences is so hard. It is a commitment. Like you have to put out content. You have to be in front of them. When it comes to a newsletter or building an email list, those people might have said, "Yeah, I want to hear from you," but now you have to educate them about what you're all about, what you offer, how to get it, and you have to continue to build that trust over time. So, I mean, a lot of business owners start out with such good intentions and they just forget that there is a waiting period of sorts where you just have to show up and you have to continue to be in the arena for anybody to really kind of notice you.
Absolutely. We almost live in like an attention economy in a way of like there's so much competition for just having someone pay attention to you, let alone actually decide to transact with you and know that you exist and choose to spend their actual cash on you.
Mhm.
But it is hard work and it's not necessarily fun work. Like it is a ton of time and effort and you get better at it as time goes on, right?
Mhm.
Thinking back, I was just archiving some of the podcasts that I like the very first episodes that I did. And I'm like, oh God, these are embarrassing. People listen to these. People heard these. And now
Yeah.
like, okay, I can actually listen to these episodes that are the new ones. I'm like, okay, these are actually pretty good.
Yeah.
But we get better at it. We change our
Mhm.
brand, we evolve, we streamline, and we tighten it. How do we avoid being so maybe simple is the wrong word, but so clear that it's not enough information or is clear am I confusing clear with simple?
I think they go hand in hand, but I think we've traded we've traded clear for I shouldn't say clear. We've traded simple for complex, thinking that if we can communicate a very complex business problem, if we can communicate a solution, a very complex solution in a clear way, that's how we win. Well, not necessarily. Sometimes it is the simplest ideas that win. Sometimes it is the clearest ideas that win. The more complex it is, the more you have to bank on a customer burning a lot of calories or having to do a lot of thinking in order to understand it. And I think that's where we miss it. We're trying to communicate so that somebody does something, right? When what we should be doing is we should be communicating so that they can understand it. Sometimes that means being very clever. Sometimes that means being ultra clear. Sometimes that means being overly creative. And I mean, we could all give examples of advertising that we've seen that is just amazing, right? It's got 6 words on it. My favorite commercial of all time, by the way, I don't know if you remember this from several years ago. Peloton did this ad, and this woman was on there who was already fairly fit, and she got roasted on the internet. Well,
Right.
then Aviation Gin came out, and they hired that same actress, and all you see is her blank face. I think the ad had like 50 words total in it for all of 30, 45 seconds. They communicated everything while communicating almost nothing. Like everybody knew, oh, okay, we see what they're doing here, right? Sometimes that's the tactic that works. I think the challenge, Alyssa, is when it's not clear to us, it's never going to be clear to our customers. When
Yeah.
it's not clear to our team, they're going to go slower in creating something. And when I talk about it, it has to start at the top or it has to start with leadership. It has very little to do with leadership coming up with these great ideas. All leadership has to do, all your marketing director, your executive directors have to do is be clear and the team will understand and run with it. I've worked in some huge teams before where all of us looked at each other after a meeting and went, "Didn't we already do this like a year ago and it didn't work? Why are we doing it again?" And then we have to get some answers. And once we start digging in, we realize, hey, this is actually totally different than what we were doing, but it wasn't communicated in the right way. Whenever you're trying to translate ideas from the top out into the marketplace, clarity has to be at the core of everything that you do. But there is a process you have to go through in order to get through that or to get to that as an internal team so that when they go to create stuff, it just flies off the shelf.
One of the one of the things that I see a lot of times in businesses that I work with is when the leadership actually isn't clear on what they wanna do and what they wanna go forward, so then you end up with a team who's doing their best. Because I believe at their core, we are all trying to do our best work. Nobody goes to for me, most of the time, nobody goes into work and says, "I'm going to intentionally do a bad job today." Now, maybe they get jaded over time and things change, but for the most part, we all as human beings want to do things that matter and that have meaning. And then you just have, like, a set of leadership who either, it's a group of people that can't agree on what the true vision is or what their core, like, thing that we do is, or, that's evolved over time and whether that evolution happened because they decided to evolve or it happened sneakily, like I mentioned, you start doing all these other things, or it just happened to them because the market changed. They
Mhm.
don't have clear vision of who they are, what they do, and maybe aren't self-aware enough to do that. So, are they just a lost cause until leadership figures it out, or is there anything us team members can do to help drive it forward even though our leadership doesn't have clarity on who they are and what they want?
I've spent most of my career being in that exact same seat that you're describing, Alyssa, where I haven't been a leader. I've been in leadership before, but for the majority of my professional career, I have been leading in my role, not necessarily leading by title. And some of the most frustrating moments that I can remember are asking a million questions and just getting shut down and being told, like, just go do it. That's your directive, right? When it becomes that tactical, then I mean, it just sucks all the joy out of it. Nobody wants to go make stuff at that point, right? You just want to get it done and move along. I think,
Especially people in creative roles, I feel like you
oh, yeah.
have to let them, like, I don't consider myself creative per se, I'm not artistic, but I am creative.
Mhm.
And I need the moment to breathe and to think and to dig through it, and if you were just giving me, like, a blueprint, I could never do it. I would
Yeah.
never be able to complete that work successfully.
I'm the same way where I can follow brand standards. I can 100% get behind these are the guardrails. But there are also times, and I can give very specific examples where I said, "Hey, I think this is the thing that's going to move the needle," and we ran a test, and it did move the needle, and I was still told no because it wasn't within brand standards. That's okay. You know what mattered more in that moment, Alyssa? It mattered that I was heard and that I
Yeah.
had an opportunity. It did not matter that we went with my idea. I think it's a two-way street. There are a lot of leaders who never give that much creative freedom to their teams, and that's such a miss. You're never going to move forward as a brand if you don't empower your team to disagree and to bring good ideas to the table, to at least just say, hey, let's take this and see if there's something to it. Conversely, as a team member, as a creative, I should never be so personally invested in my stuff that if my idea doesn't go, then I shut down. That's being a bad teammate. That's not helping your brand, your company, your leader, be set up for success.
Yeah.
So I think where most leaders miss this boat, unfortunately, is we get too caught up in all of the demands, all of the goals, all of the KPIs, trying to hold everything in context, and then not at least breathing before we give an answer or considering somebody's question or saying, what are the things that I have not considered? Go talk to the low men on the totem pole and say, I want to know how my decisions, this whole thing impacts your day to day. What not just what can I do to make your job easier? Because I think that's a pretty easy question for a lot of people to ask. But to really look some of your creators, some of your marketers in the eye and say, what are we not seeing here? What are we missing? Are we just not listening to our customers enough? Have we missed something going on in the marketplace? Is there a tool we haven't leveraged? Is there just something that we haven't touched in a long time that we need to revisit and optimize? That's an easy way to do things too. Is it's again, it's not about creating the newest thing. Maybe it's just about trying to make a small tweak here and there. We ran a multivariant test on a homepage one time. And when I say multivariant, we put 9 different headlines in front of different people. Picked the top 3, ran the top 3 against each other. And wouldn't you know, one of the ones that we were the least confident in was the one that resonated the most with our customers. And all it was an optimization test. It wasn't new, even though we had to be creative in saying how many different ways could we say this headline. It was literally just, is there a better way we can engage our customers on our number one trafficked page? That was it.
I think too, one of my rules whenever I'm leading a team or working with other people in kind of a creative project, I always open with like our housekeeping rules, right? When we're doing projects like this. And one of my housekeeping rules is there's no ego in the creative process. So, like exactly what you said, you cannot get upset if someone doesn't take your idea. And then my second rule is all ideas on the table. If you hold it to yourself, you can't be mad when we don't do it because we didn't know it existed.
Yep.
So, it's no ego in creative, all ideas on the table. And so that can be really nerve-wracking for people when they first do it,
Hmm.
especially if they don't have that, like, deep core trust with me, having worked with me in the past. Because there is a little bit of wonder, like, "Does she really mean that?" Right? And I always follow it up with, "And if you think my idea is shit, tell me, because I don't need to be embarrassed about it. And if
Sure.
you think your idea is great, put it out there, but don't be upset if we don't all agree." And we're not looking for total agreement, but we are looking for general consensus, like, do we tend to feel like we're in the right direction?
Yeah.
Because the
Again,
other thing is if you're just looking for everyone to be 100% unanimous, you're never gonna get there and you will spin forever.
you really will. And one of my favorite exercises to do, and sometimes I can do this on the front end. If I have enough trust in a leader who can give me some insight onto their team, I will try to ask who in this room is not going to speak up that I need to call on directly.
Mhm.
And that's
Who do we need to pick on because we know they have a gold mine of ideas?
right. And sometimes when I'm in the room, I will always be aware of who doesn't talk. And I will wait until there's a lull, like everybody's just burned out, and I'll look at that person and I will go, I know there are wheels turning in your head right now. What have we missed? What have we not addressed? What ideas do we need to pull out of you to help make everything? Because those are the people who are processing in real time. And
Yeah.
those are the people who can help bring things together and pick out main themes and keywords and everything else. Those are the people that I want to hear from the most. I mean, if I'm being honest, because they're the ones who are going to provide that wisdom and insight that everybody else misses because we're just trying to get everything out really fast, right? I
And
love those people.
recognizing that we have those different types of personalities. My,
Hmm.
business partner and I are very different decision makers. They used to joke that my nickname was Trigger and his nickname was Percolator because I'm very much like, "Trigger, trigger, trigger. Yes, yes, yes. Hot fire, hot action." And he's very much like, "Cool, let me process this. I know we've made a decision, but I need to sit with it a while and I need to let it percolate." And so we would always know that part of our process in any creative decision making or really any decision making at all required the time for the quick fire. And then I
Mhm.
had to cool my jets and let him percolate because we were never going to have a satisfying resolution if I didn't give him the time to do that. And so knowing who you have in the room and respecting who their what their natural tendencies are and not trying to change them. If I tried to make him a trigger person, we would never get anywhere because it would just be so antithesis to who he was as a person.
Yep. This is also one of those tensions that everybody feels no matter what the size of your team is. If you are on your own and you feel like it is all on you, inviting some other voices in the room can become difficult. It
Yeah,
it might mean, you just bring your executive assistant in or your sales guy who's remote or whatever it is, but having an additional voice in there to say, this is how this affects my seat or whatever. With big teams especially, this is where a lot of leaders try to cop out as well to say, I'm just going to let the team do this. Sometimes that needs to happen. And truthfully, it does. In unhealthy teams, especially to give permission. And that I know that's a big red flag too. But if the whole team is saying, yeah, we don't really feel comfortable with this person, in here, or you can just tell there's reservations going, I'll just ask them, hey, can you step out for like 20 minutes?
yeah,
And we can bring you back in here. But there are other times where leaders are like, no, 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 I don't need to be in there. And I'll be like, yeah, you do. You absolutely need to be in here because you need to hear how this team processes. You've probably been disconnected from this process for too long, and
yeah,
you're missing out on how they are actually getting work done and how they're approaching problems because eventually you're going to have other problems that these people can solve and you're going to want
absolutely.
them in there.
Considering all of the people that you know or aspire to know, who else is out there? Who else should we be listening to?
I've got 2 leadership guru really 3 leadership gurus that I think are making leadership really simple again. I think we have gotten so caught up in systems and playbooks that it becomes so overwhelming for a leadership to keep everything in
Yeah.
tension. So there's 2 guys that just released a book. They run an organization called Lead Every Day. They're actually one of my clients. Both of these are 2 of my clients, so I get to plug all my people here. But Randy Gravett and Mark Miller are those guys that have literally been there and done that, both doing leadership, studying leadership, and becoming amazing practitioners for teams. I mean, I wish I could just when I produced their podcast for a little while, I would get so overwhelmed by all the pull quotes, and I'd be like, I have forgotten more in this one conversation than I will ever remember, and I just want to plaster all of these quotes everywhere. There's another guy named Matt Payton, Dr. Matt Payton, who's got a book coming out next year about the core of leadership, these 8 principles that can guide servant leaders and leaders at all levels. But he has spent most of his career in higher education, specifically Christian higher education. And some of the stories that he shares about how leaders have overcome things or being set up for success, man, I love listening to him share some of those stories. But he's got so much wisdom and insight. Those are 2 organizations that I follow really closely. Another one that I think is changing the game in masterminds right now is a guy named Brian Lawrence. He runs an organization called Winsight, where he combines a lot of different things. You could call it coaching, you could call it counseling, you could call it consulting, but it all kind of fits under this umbrella. And he's bringing these folks together in these masterminds, and people are changing each other's businesses in some really really cool ways. Those are the 2 guys that like if I ever take Brian Lawrence out to coffee, I'm always just blown away by him saying like, "Hey, have you thought about this?" And I'll just go, yeah, I didn't, but I should
Yeah.
have, right? He's like, I mean, I was just thinking about it the other day. I thought it would be relevant.
And if someone is connecting with you, they want to learn more, they want to follow along, where can they find you online?
You can always find me on LinkedIn. Try to post every now and then. It's really easy. It's Charlie Sells, just like it sounds. Or you can go to clarityovereverything.com. I have a couple of things there. One is just an overview of how I can help small businesses and creative and marketing teams. But there's also a free PDF that you can download that shows you some of the things that we've talked about today. You can also take a little assessment to see, are we clear and aligned, or are we confused and misaligned? Are we stuck, or do we have momentum? And you can get a really good finger in the air of what direction you're headed right now as a brand and as a business.
Well, thank you so much, Charlie, for coming on the show today. I think this was a really exciting conversation and something that all of us needed to hear.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Alyssa.